Uh, Hello, my dear students. A very good morning to all of you. I'm sure most of you by now have realized that these are tough times, and um we are actually quite unaware as to when this whole pandemic is going to end, and it has created not only physical and financial problems, but I'm sure, I know, in fact, that there are a lot of mental problems also that are created. But during these tough times, it is of great importance that we look at everything with a very positive attitude, and take everything in our stride, so that the days to come will be much easier, and we don't have to carry the baggage of these times, and what we have undergone. um, these things, we really don't know. Things have become so unpredictable that this pandemic may end, and we may have something new that may come into existence, and again disturb our lives. So one of the best ways or best things is, just try to think positively, and keep ourselves mentally and physically fit, and move ahead. Also, at the same time, there is always a ray of hope that, uh, now that we have reached, let's say, the bottom, of this crisis, where we can see helplessness, hopelessness, and a lot of sufferings, and so on. So from here, things cannot go bad any further. So there has to be improvement, and I'm sure things will improve over a period of time, and all of us will see light at the end of the tunnel. Um, as a part of this induction program, what I intend to do today is, just talk about some things which are going to be of great help when you graduate, when you go out, and so on. Even though it may appear to be a bit early in your career, or your college days, I'm sure these lessons and tips which I'm going to discuss today will remain with you for a very long time. Of course, my students who have joined, who were in B division in the first semester, whom I taught elements of mechanical engineering, uh, when they were in the C cycle. Now they have moved on to the physics cycle. For those students, some of the things and some of the discussions may appear to be a repetition, because I have been talking about all these things in the class. But nonetheless, it is going to be a good, you could say, recap of all that we had discussed, as well as maybe there is something new which they are going to learn today. So I'll be talking about communication, and the importance of positive attitude, and more importantly about what are those skills which are needed to become employable. Okay, tomorrow when you uh, get ready to take up a job, what is it that matters the most? So what I'll do is I'll share the screen, and go ahead with the presentation, and maybe at the end, we can have a kind of a discussion. So I'll share the presentation, and go into the presentation mode, and just discuss a few key points. Some of these things you may already know, but my style or my way of presentation, I'm sure, is going to be slightly different. So I sincerely hope that it's going to be a very good learning experience, and this induction is going to be a fruitful one, because when all of you were in your first semester, when you had just joined the institution, I had taken a session on universal human values. I actually don't know how many of you attended that one. That also is equally important. Values play a major role in our lives throughout. So I didn't want to repeat the same thing. I want to go ahead with something slightly different. So I'll present, and we'll see how it takes shape. Okay, I hope that the presentation is visible, and I'll go to the presentation mode. This introduction I don't have to give to everyone because most of you know, and you have seen me in the college. I belong to mechanical engineering, and even though I belong to mechanical engineering, I have also been involved in other aspects of uh, honing the skills of the students, and trying to maybe disseminate as much as possible information and knowledge about concepts like communication, motivation, employability skills. Then how to write your resumes, how to face interviews, what is a group discussion, and these kind of things, which are going to help in the long run. So we'll be talking about mainly these three concepts today, along with a small, you could say, touching upon concepts of leadership as well as emotional intelligence. So uh, we all communicate day in day out, and we talk to each other. We also communicate in the form of a non-verbal type, that is gestures and facial expressions, body posture, and so on. But if we look at the whole concept in itself, we generally say that anybody, any human being, is seldom better than his or her conversation. That is, however impressed we may be looking at a person, we'll come to know how the person is the moment he or she opens their mouth. So physical appearance and everything else is fine, but communication is equally important because it all depends on how you put across your thoughts, and how well you are able to convince others, and how well you can mingle with others. What is your you could say level of or bonding and chemistry with others, and so on, because this is what is needed the most. Human beings are basically social animals, and they would like to uh, present themselves in the best possible way in a society. So one of the ways they can do it is by improving communication. So as long as one master this art of communication, it becomes extremely difficult for any person. I don't say to be directly liked by others, but it is something like, where uh, uh, you develop a kind of a charming personality or a magnetic personality, mainly because of communication skills. And of course there are other you could say traits and characteristics, ingredients, like how empathetic you are, how compassionate you are, how kind you are, and so on. But basically people look upon you based upon your communication. So, what are the communication goals? What it means is, why do we communicate in the first place? So, there are various communication goals. You can see that we communicate in order to change behavior. Uh, this is seen mainly, let's say, in a parent-child kind of a discussion, and parents keep on telling their children that you should do this, you should not do this, and so on, where they are not only trying to instill the values, but also they want some kind of a change in the behavior of their children. And this kind of a change is going to remain forever in their children. So for example, if parents tell you that you have to respect elders, you have to respect your teachers, and so on, and if it gets embedded in your mind, then no matter what, wherever you are always going to do that. So that causes a complete change in your behavior, and this change is going to be permanent. Then you also communicate to get action. We want others to do something, so because of that, we communicate to ensure understanding. We have a viewpoint, and we want others to understand what we are trying to say. So that is another reason why we communicate to persuade. Persuasion is again, um, for example, again, when we talk about let's say LIC agents, or we talk about other kind of salesperson, you can see how persuasive they are. Or if you go to automobile shop, a sales guy comes and starts telling you about all the wonderful features and good things about the uh, automobile model which you're looking at, and just make sure that he or she convinces you about not only the benefits, but also will persuade you to finally buy the vehicle, because that's their job. That is what they are supposed to do. And we also communicate to get as well as to give information. So it can never be one sided. Please remember that this whole concept of communication, where suppose if I want to communicate a particular idea, the first thing that happens is I will realize that I have to communicate an idea, and then this idea I have to encode it in my brain. After encoding, I have to choose a medium, whether I'm going to communicate using oral form of communication or a written form of communication. And then using this medium, I'm going to send it to the other person. Now, when the other person receives the message, that message needs to be decoded. And after decoding, the person will understand what I am trying to say. Now, till here it is fine, but it never ends there. Okay, so the person whom we call as the receiver, once he or she receives the message, it is mandatory for that person to give a feedback. So whether they have understood the message or not, or whether they have received the message or not, or what action they are going to take based on the message received, and so on. So that person will need to give a feedback to the sender, and only then we talk about the whole process of communication being complete. So we get information, and we also give information. So these are the basic communication goals. Now, there are some important points that need to be remembered, especially when it is in the form of verbal communication. So, this verbal communication can be either oral communication or it can be written communication, where most of you are aware of written communication. You write so many things day in, day out, be it right from notes or to your journals, or maybe your exam papers, and so on. Similarly, oral communication is where you talk, okay, be it with your parents, your friends, and teachers, and so on. Now, there are some, you could say, pillars of communication which will enable you to be a very good communicator. So, we call them as the 6 C's of communication. Now, what are these 6 C's of communication? Very quickly, we'll go through one by one. The first one is communication needs to have clarity. So it has to be clear, especially in oral communication. We talk about the diction. Sometimes we also have come across people where we say that some person is not very clear in communicating, and when that person is speaking, I don't understand a few words at all. It appears that he or she swallows the words, and so on. So that should not happen. So the diction, the audibility, again, audibility is there should be a certain level of audibleness, that the person has to maintain, and of course that depends on what size of a crowd you are addressing. Suppose you're just talking to a friend on a one-to-one basis, there's no need for you to raise your voice or shout. But if you're addressing, let's say, 100 people, and you don't have a mic or something, then maybe you'll have to slightly increase your volume. So audibility is also very important. Then we have the modulation. Modulation is, without realizing, there will be ups and downs in our communication, and we want this modulation to happen. Otherwise, everything appears to be extremely monotonous. Okay, it should never be like, we are talking to somebody, and we are so monotonous that the other person gets completely bored, and it's like a lullaby, and that person goes off to sleep. So modulation, voice modulation, where we emphasize on certain words, where we raise our voice on certain concepts or certain phrases, and then lower it for certain phrases. Uh, it goes a long way. It is extremely important. So that is the clarity. Then we have correctness. Obviously, this is something even which I tell when I give a lecture on how to face interviews. Whenever a question is being asked, or when we are discussing something, it is always in the right spirit, that correct information has to be passed. Okay, so there is no escape here. You can't keep lying all the time or telling lies all the time. So you have to be correct in your whole, you could say, discussion. Then completeness is, of course, these days we have the facility of, or the provision of, appending or adding to whatever we say, pretty soon. But earlier, sometimes it so used to happen that when people used to write letters, or when people used to communicate using this form, after sending a letter, after posting a letter, they used to think, oh, this information should also have been written. Similarly, sometimes it happens with us also. When we enter a class, and let's say give a lecture for 55 minutes on a particular topic, the moment we come out and when we are going back to our chamber, suddenly we realize that we have missed out on something. Oh, this point also had to be covered somehow. It skipped my mind, and so on. So this can be taken care of by proper preparation. So for you also it happens, when you're writing your exams, exam papers, and so on. After you come out of the examination hall, and when you're discussing with friends, and others, then you suddenly realize that in one of the answers you have missed an important point to be mentioned, and so on. So that obviously means the whole process of communication was not complete. Then courteous, that is, you need to empathize with people. When you're talking to others, you should understand that they are also human beings, and there is a certain level of humility, politeness, humbleness, that needs to come into a picture, because unless and until you are polite and humble, uh, the other person will not develop the right kind of picture of you in their mind. They may end up feeling that you may be arrogant, or you are indifferent, you are not caring at all, and so on. So you need to empathize with people. And I don't say that this is something where you need to go out of the way and say very nice and rosy things about the other person, and which looks like you are buttering them, and so on. That is not what I mean. What I mean is, you have to be as polite as possible, irrespective of whom you are talking to. You may be talking to someone who is younger to you, you may be talking to somebody who is older to you, but still, in either cases, you have to empathize with that person. Then concreteness is, where you drive your point. There is a slight difference between adamancy and driving your point. So as long as you have the conviction in what you are planning to discuss or what you are trying to say, then you can make sure that you stick to your point without budging. So there has to be some concreteness, uh, where we say that this person is extremely confident about what he or she is saying. So you have to drive your point in such a manner, and concise. Sometimes some people have this habit of beating around the bush. There is a very simple thing which needs to be told, and for that there is an entire story which is built up. Okay, so this is something very normally, we see it in children. Okay, small children, young children, they do it, that they want to tell something, but they end up telling a story. Okay, and then they come to the main point, which is actually very trivial in its content. So being a professional tomorrow, you have to make sure that you come straight to the point. Okay, so you don't have to spend a lot of time, because in your professional career, time is going to be money. Okay, nobody is going to give you a lot of time. So in that short time which you are going to, let's say, spend with your boss, how you can put forth all the points precisely, briefly, and with all other relevant information. So it has to be as concise as possible. So these are the six C's of communication. Now, many a times it can be because of ignorance, it can be because of bad reading habits, it can be because you have not practiced. In some cases, I would also agree that coming from a vernacular background also plays a role, and so on. But I'll, just to break the ice, I'll just show you some funny leave notes or leave letters, which are written. And these are not I'm not showing you any fictitious leave notes. These were actually written. Okay, these were written by people working in corporate offices and multinational companies. When you look at it, uh, sometimes, of course, you just laugh over it, and also at the same time, you tend to get shocked. How can someone write a letter or a leave note, or like this? So this is where communication fails. When I say it fails, it's not actually a complete failure of communication. This sends a wrong signal, or a wrong message. For example, somebody had written in a leave note that since I have to go to my village to sell my land along with my wife, please sanction 1 week leave. Now we all can understand what the person is trying to say, but the meaning which this sentence gives is entirely different. What it means is that person wants to not only sell the land, but also sell his wife. Okay, so it has to be reframed properly. Otherwise, it's going to send an extremely wrong signal. Then uh, some employee from one of the companies in Bangalore, writes. This is where, in some religions, you have some ceremony that is to be held. So, in order to carry out that ceremony, how the person has written a leave note, you can see that who was performing thread ceremony for his 10-year-old son. As I want to shave my son's head, please leave me for 2 days. No, which is meaningless. Okay, so the actual act of shaving the head is done by a barber. Okay, so this guy is actually not a barber. What he wanted to say was, I'm going to perform this ceremony on my son, so for which I want leave for 2 days. Then another one where a person says, as my mother-in-law has expired and I am the only one responsible for it, please grant me 10 days leave. Uh, this is actually it amounts to murder. Okay, because if a person says that my mother-in-law has expired and I am the one responsible for it, it means that person is responsible for the death of mother-in-law. But what the person actually wants to say is, there is no one to take care, and there is no one to perform the rituals, and so on. There is uh, nobody else who can complete all the formalities. So for that purpose, please grant me leave. So it has to be written in an entirely different way. Then, since I have to go to the cremation ground at 10 o'clock and I may not return, please grant me half day casual leave. Now, maybe there's some relative, some friend, somebody who has expired, and someone wants to go to the cremation ground, uh, perform all the rites, and then after that, freshen up and come back to the office. So this takes about half a day. This is what the person wants to say, that I want a half day leave because I want to go to the cremation ground, and because of which I'll not be able to attend the office. But if you look at the first part of the sentence, since I have to go to cremation ground at 10 o'clock and I may not return, what does this mean is that person is also going to die in the cremation ground only. I may not return means what? Uh, this is something which is absurd. Okay, it doesn't make sense. In fact, not only do we have grammatical mistakes and mistakes in the process of communicating, but I have seen a lot of spelling mistakes also. Okay, so when students especially write a letter, let's say addressing the principal, they don't know what is the difference between PRINCIPLE and PRINCIPAL. Okay, so principal and principal. This is a kind of a disadvantage in English language, where we have so many words which are spelt the same, which are pronounced the same, but their spellings are different. Okay, the pronunciation may be the same, the spellings are different, and they have got different meanings also. So you have to be extremely careful, and you should know the context in which that word is being used. Okay, so when I say accept, so ACCEPT is also accept, and EXCEPT is also accept. So which one to use? So that depends on the context again. Then we have stationary, where it ends with NARY and NERY. So one is for all the stationery which we buy in a stationery shop, and the other means that it is not moving. Stationery is it is standstill. So you need to be extremely careful, with while using these words. Very commonly, very learned people also. What I have seen is they almost in most of the cases they get confused between uh, LOSE and LOOAC. Okay, so LOSE is also loose and LOOAC is also loose. But when they are using it, they use it in a very, very wrong manner. So, they say these are very tough times, because I had to lose you. Lose you is LOSE. Now, LWSE is where it is not taut or it is not tight. Okay, something you have tied, and it's not tight, and you say it is loose. So that is LOOAC. So you have to be careful when you are using homonyms in English language, because that itself forms a part of written communication. And another very simple, funny leave note is, I'm suffering from fever. Please declare 1 day holiday. Now, that person, one of course is not a well-known person within an organization. Okay, but please declare 1 day holiday is what, because he or she is suffering from fever. Does it mean that the entire office has to be closed, or the entire district has to be closed, the entire state has to be closed? No, it doesn't mean that way. So since I'm suffering from fever, kindly give me a leave for 1 day or something like that, has to be written. Even though they may sound to be very funny, they need to be taken very seriously, because we may also indulge in these kind of activities. Now, why is communication important? We all need to realize this, because this is an integral part. We breathe every moment, and every moment we are communicating, whether it is interpersonal communication or intrapersonal communication. That is, even if we are not talking with somebody else, we are actually talking with ourselves. We are thinking, and there is some information which is being processed within. So that is intrapersonal communication. Interpersonal communication is, of course, where we talk with others, or we communicate with others, and so on. Now, both are equally important. Communication is important because it inspires confidence. It gives you a lot of confidence when you communicate properly. Then it builds respect in business as well as social life, where people look at you with great esteem and regard. And it help makes friends. That is essentially, we call that as networking. Slowly you will realize the importance of networking also, as you move ahead, how you need to contact others, how somebody may help you in procuring a job or giving you some lead, and so on. Then it helps you develop a very distinct personality, uh, because not everyone is a born orator. Okay, so all of them, all the great orators what we see, no doubt they may have that some inherent skill in them, but they would have also practiced a lot. Okay, so they would have also been very well read, and slowly over a period of time, they have polished themselves such that they become excellent orators. And there are some such people whom we don't want them to stop at all. When they start talking, it is so pleasing, the way, the style of talking, as well as the information which they are providing, is absolutely wonderful. And we all have come across some such people. So you develop a distinct personality because of that, and people will uh, remember you or point at you as, oh, that person is an excellent orator. So maybe it can be a debate competition, it can be an elocution competition, and so on. So there, when you perform well, you leave a mark on the minds of the people. Then it reveals your ability to others. You don't have to hold on everything to yourself. When you are a good communicator, how able you are, how competent you are, that others will come to know. Now, how do we communicate? I have been again talking about this in my previous slides. We communicate in a verbal form, which is either written communication, or it can be in oral form, which is oral communication where we speak. Okay, so written communication is where we use the normal modes of pen and paper, or maybe it can be an email, it can be something else. And especially these days, because we are so much, you could say, adept to communicating through messages and so on. Our emails have actually gone really bad. Okay, so there are some email etiquettes that need to be maintained. I don't want to spend much time about email etiquettes now, but emails have to be written very, very professionally. You can send an SMS, or you can send on a WhatsApp message, any way you want, to your friend or somebody, but you cannot resort to the same kind of thing when it comes to writing, an email. So written communication where pen and paper or some such mode is used, while oral communication is where you actually talk to others. You speak and create an impression about yourself. So that comes under verbal communication. Then you also have non-verbal communication, which is generally in the form of body language and facial expressions. Many a times you don't have to speak. Okay, just by looking at your face, just by looking at your gestures, just by looking at the expressions, what you give out, the other person will automatically understand. Whether you're happy, you're sad, you're angry, or you're worried, you're anxious, and so on. All these can be easily expressed using facial expressions. So it can be also, gestures, eye contact, handshakes, and so on. And they say a person who is not confident, uh, lacks, these non-verbal, you could say, pointers, or non-verbal hints. For example, if a person is not very confident, and when he or she is talking to you, even though they are talking to you, they may be looking somewhere else. This is quite possible. Similarly, the gestures. There are people who are sometimes who very aggressive, who always stand with their hands on their hips. Okay, that is an aggressive nature, pointing fingers, thumping the table when they are talking, and so raising their voice, and so on. It's a combination. Similarly, handshakes. Just by shaking hands, you'll realize how the other person is. It should always be a very confident and I don't say a strong, but a convincing handshake. So these are the ways in which we communicate. So it can be emojis. These days you're all familiar with emojis. Then the features of effective communication. Uh, what exactly are the features, or how exactly we need to go about it? One is active listening. That means you have to be a very good listener. If you are not a good listener, then you will never be able to communicate effectively. So one major ingredient of effective communication is to be a very active listener. You have to spend a lot of time listening to others. Okay. So recently I was just reading a quote somewhere, that when you talk, you are telling something which you already know. You are just sharing the information which you already know. But when you listen, you may learn something new. So if you want, if you have that uh, intent of learning something new, then you need to be an active listener. Then eye contact. I just mentioned about eye contact, which speaks volumes about your confidence level. So you have to maintain an eye contact when it is on a one-to-one basis. But when you are addressing a crowd, what you need to do is you have to scan the entire crowd. You should never look at one person and deliver your lecture, nor make it very apparent that you are scanning the crowd and so on. Casually you have to look at everyone. So eye contact is extremely important, which will tell the level of confidence. Then you have the postures, how you sit, how you stand at the podium, and so on. And since many of us are having what we call as stage fear, it happens initially when you go on the stage and start delivering something or start saying something. There are chances that your legs start shaking or shivering. Your voice also quivers, trembles a bit. And then if you're holding a piece of paper in your hand, it may so happen that people can easily see that your hand is trembling and the paper is shaking, and so on. So posture also plays a major role, because based on the posture, we classify people themselves as aggressive, assertive, and submissive. So aggressive people are the ones, I just took an example where people pointing fingers, thumping the table, hands on the hips, and so on. They are very aggressive people. Assertive people, they are very calm, very composed, and that is what we actually want to be. And then we have submissive people who are underconfident. Okay, so who are not very confident, and who don't look into your eyes while they are speaking, or of those six C's which we just mentioned, some of the C's may be completely missing in them. So posture is also very important. Then language which is used, there is always a myth that you have to use very hi-fi language, which is absolutely not true. Okay, now to read and listen to such language, it is always a pleasure. But when it comes to understanding and passing on information, we should never resort to very hi-fi language or a very rosy language. Most of us have heard about, let's say, Shashi Tharoor, and he's blessed with excellent vocabulary, and many a times, he speaks out sentences which are impeccable, extremely good. But what is the point in using such hi-fi words when the other person does not understand it at all? That is a very futile attempt. So you have to use a very simple and easy to understand language, and then you have a questioning skills. So, of course, in my B division, this was, I don't say a complaint, but this was something which I always used to tell my students. Uh, you need to ask questions, because unless and until you ask questions, one is your doubts are not cleared. The second thing is, when you question, it also sends a kind of information, or a signal that you have been listening to what is being said. So unless and until you have very good questioning skills, um, uh, the person who is talking should never feel that he or she is talking to uh, just rocks or walls or something like that. So whenever there is a provision given to you to ask questions, you can always ask questions. And in fact, this is a very very important, you could say, part of facing an interview. Okay, so when you're facing an interview, at some point of time, you'll definitely be asked by the person who is interviewing you, like, do you have any questions? So when the other person asks you a question like this, do you have any questions? You should actually never say no. Okay. There will be a lot of doubts and a lot of questions in our mind. So it is always better to prepare a list and ask those questions. So you should have wonderful questioning skills. Okay. So these are the features for effective communication. And be on any side, whether you are a listener or whether you are the speaker. On both the sides, these are extremely important. Then we'll be talking about motivation now. Motivation, especially during such tough times which we are facing, this is something which is extremely important. How do we motivate? No, I am not seeing the face of any one of you, uh, and I really don't know what is going through your minds and so on. But how do I ensure that you are glued to my lecture? You're listening to this attentively and so on. That can happen only when I have the conviction, and also when I start sharing important things. So it's always like taking a horse to the pond. Okay, this is against very, you could say, very often told by me in most of the lectures. That is motivation, where you can take a horse to the pond, but can you make it drink water? If that is a question which is asked, you probably will never be able to make it drink water, because the horse will drink the water only if it is thirsty. So the same thing holds good here also, everywhere also. So I may have volumes of information and I am ready to share it with someone, but unless and until the other person who wants to learn, um then no, I can share the information and so on. But if the other person who is completely biased and not willing to learn or not willing to listen and so on, then it is not going to play any role at all. And in fact, in motivation also, we have several theories. Um, so nothing in this world is permanent except change. So what I'll do is, I'll show you this video, which is a wonderful story about an eagle. Now, what it means is, assuming that we all have a lifespan of, let's say, about 70 to 75 years, how we need to change ourselves and modify ourselves so that uh, life becomes more meaningful, and how we can adapt ourselves to change, as a part of motivation itself. So, very quickly, we'll just see this video and, then move ahead. Okay, so no, that is what I just wanted to convey. Where we talk about changing. We need to keep changing our attitude. We need to keep changing our thought process. We need to keep changing our approach towards various things in life and so on. So, what exactly motivation is? Motivation obviously is the urge to do something. So, when we say urge to do something, it should come from within. Okay, so again, I have been telling this in my classes that I may take a 1 hour, 2 hour lecture on motivation, and for about 10-15 minutes, everyone is highly energized and highly motivated. But the moment I leave the hall, and maybe after some time, this entire level of motivation is again back to normal. Uh, it is a very arduous task, very difficult task, where uh, remaining motivated continuously is a very big challenge. So we need to find ways and means to remain motivated, and we should have that urge to do something. And motivation is also to achieve something in life. Okay, so initially we go behind the materialistic things. We want to earn money and so on, but slowly we start realizing as we grow old that along with money there are other things also that need to be addressed. Then it comes from within an individual. This is what I meant, that no, there are no external forces which can motivate you. Okay, even if there are external forces that motivate you, that motivation is going to be temporary. Then no one can enforce it. That is, I can't I don't have a magic wand, and no, I just turn that wand and say that okay, now that you are motivated. It is impossible. No, you need to get motivated on your own. Then we have this carrot and stick theory. Even though there are so many theories of motivation, the theory that finally works is a carrot and stick, which is a story about a washerman who is using a mule. A mule is a cross between a donkey and a horse. So he's using a mule to carry dry clothes from the place where he stays to a nearby river. So he takes them to the river, washes the clothes, and then he rinses them, wrinkles them, removes the water, then puts all these wet clothes again on the back of the mule and brings them back to his place and then dries them and so on. Now, one fine day, when he takes the mule to the river, after washing the clothes, obviously the weight of the clothes before and after, if you compare, after washing the clothes, however hard you try to remove all the water from it, there will be still some water content. So, you will have a heavier weight. So once he places this load on the back of the mule just sits down. Okay, so it uh, refuses to move. It is not budging at all. Now, how will the washerman motivate the mule to get up and go back home? Okay, so the same thing it holds good for all of us also. There are instances where we get demotivated, and it's just that we don't want to do anything. Okay, especially in a professional life. So how should our superiors motivate us? So it is by something called as the carrot and stick theory. One is carrot stands for reward, okay, and stick stands for punishment. So the washerman can do is take a stick and tie a thread to it, and at the end of the thread, you can tie a carrot and hold that carrot in front of the eyes of the mule. The mule will think that there is something to eat, so it will get up and try to eat the carrot. Now, once it comes nearer to the carrot, you move backwards. You slowly start moving towards your house, and the mule also starts moving, thinking that it'll get that carrot to eat. And once you reach the house, what you can do is you can unload the clothes and everything, and give that carrot as a reward to the mule because it took difficulty in standing up and moving. Now, another way is stick theory. Stick theory is where you punish the mule. You take a stick, the same stick, don't attach any carrot or anything, but take the same stick and you beat the mule mercilessly. You beat it such that it reaches a stage where it can no longer endure the pain. It is left with no option. It will realize that unless and until I get up and move, this person is going to keep on hitting me. So it gets up and starts walking on its own. Where we talk about stick as the punishment. So in real life, actually, we all are motivated by the carrot and the stick only. That is, we all get motivated either by the rewards or by the punishment which we anticipate. Then Maslow's theory is a very popular theory about the hierarchy of needs, where we all get motivated because of these reasons. So at the base, tomorrow when you complete your graduation and when you start working, your motivation is only to satisfy your physiological needs. Okay, physiological needs means what are at the bottom. Okay, so you can see here this part. Okay, so this is the physiological need. And what are the physiological needs? It is food, clothing, and shelter. But after say about a year or two, you know that okay, your physiological needs anyway are going to be satisfied. Now you will start thinking about your safety needs. Okay, so you want a safe and secure job, where you are sure that you are going to get your payment or salary every month, and so on. Then after another 5 6 years, you acquire so much of skills that now you are confident. Anywhere I go, I can survive now. So what is your motivation then? Your motivation becomes the social needs. You need to live in a society where you are recognized by, for which company you work, and people saying, oh, this person is in a slightly senior position in that organization. You feel happy about it. At that juncture, money does not play a major role. Okay, because you would have reached such a position where social recognition is more important than money. Then you have the self-esteem or esteem where it's a matter of prestige now. You have reached such a position where you talk about the prestige, and uh, when you are on the decline of your career at the last stage, maybe on the verge of retirement and so on, that motivation, or even after you retire, you continue to live where the motivation will be self-actualization. Self-actualization is the time for introspection. um, we have come across so many philanthropists, some people who give away crores of rupees as charity, millions and billions of dollars as charity, and so on. All that is possible only when you earn that much money, right? So if you are in the first stage, you are here somewhere, you are just taken a job, and somebody comes and asks even 5,000 rupees as charity, you will think twice, because at that point of time, the level of earning itself is less. But once you have earned enough money, once you come to this stage, then you will realize that you need to give back to the society, because the society has given to you so much over a period of time. So that is all about Maslow's theory. Then we also have uh, stories about balloons, which again I have narrated in my class earlier. There are various stories. I'll just tell one story. Most of us have the habit of cribbing. We don't get motivated because we always have at the back of our mind, oh no, I come from this background. I come from a middle class family. I come from a lower class family. I come from this family. I come from a village. I come from a rural background. I am from a vernacular medium, and so on. So these kind of thoughts, negative thoughts, always hold us down. So, this is the story about balloon seller. You can see, there is a balloon seller who is standing in a park. So, just beside that place where he is standing, there is a place or a playground where children are playing. Now, So what the balloon seller does is, every day that person used to come to the park, and main aim is to sell as many balloons as possible. But how to attract the customers? How to attract the children? So, he used to take a balloon, fill it with helium or whatever gas, tie it, and then just let it go. Okay, so it used to enter high up in the sky. So one day he used to take a red color balloon. Then one day he used to take an orange color balloon, a blue color balloon, a green color balloon. Every day different colored balloons he used to take and leave it. Now there was one small child who was observing this balloon seller almost every day, and he used to see that colorful balloons were being let out, and because of which the children along who had come along with their parents and all who were nearby used to get attracted, and they used to go and buy balloons. But this child had something else in mind. So the child was so curious that um the child went to the balloon seller and just asked one question. Okay, the question was, Uncle, I see you letting balloons go high up in the air every day. Now, what will happen if you take a black color balloon and let it high up in the sky? Will that also fly in the sky? Because he had seen all the colors of the balloons being let in the air, but he had never seen a black one being let out. Now, the balloon seller may not be a very learned person, but he answers in such a wonderful way. He says that it's not the color of the balloon which is important. So he tells the child that color is immaterial. What is important is what is inside the balloon. Okay, so what is inside the balloon is taking the balloon high up in the sky. So the same thing holds good for us also. We may come from any background. That doesn't matter at all after a certain period of time. From there on, what is going to take us further high up in the rungs of ladder of success will be how well we acquire knowledge, how well we acquire skills, how adept we are, and so on. So what is there inside our brain, that is more important than how we look externally. So that is something which we all need to remember. Then what does it take to be a good human being? We all yearn, and we all keep saying that, oh, no, you have to be a good person and so on. But how to be a good person in the first place? One is motivation. We should always remain motivated. Then we should have excellent communication skills. I have talked about it. Then we should show a lot of empathy. Okay, so later on, I'll also show you another video on empathy, where there is a small difference between concept of empathy and sympathy. Empathy is where we talk about uh, you know how we feel. Sympathy is, we just sympathize people, but empathy is where we feel what the other person is feeling. Okay, so we have to empathize with people because there are some children of a lesser god. What I mean to say is underprivileged, and people who don't have all the let's say blessings in the world. Then we should have the right attitude. I'll be talking about right attitude to some extent. How important attitude is, and how it actually is going to influence our happiness and success. Then you should also have the ability to take decisions, and also a very strong character. Then one should have knowledge, skills, and common sense. No, unfortunately, what has happened is the most uncommon thing these days is common sense. People don't have common sense at all. That is, they are not in a position to use their own, uh, you could say, ability in order to take a decision, and in order to decide on something. So what it takes is just simple common sense. So, uh, in order to be a good human being, you need common sense also. Then you need to have leadership qualities. There is always a question, or there is always a debate as to whether are leaders born or are leaders made. Okay, And the answer to that is it is both. In some cases, leaders are born. There is an instinct. It is there in ingrained in their DNA. They are blessed. However, not all leaders are born. There are some people who are made. Okay, they are self-made leaders, and over a period of time, they have acquired so many good qualities and skills and traits and characteristics and so on that people look upon them as very good leaders. And the last one is humility. Humility is you may grow to any extent, be it in reputation, be it in the position in an organization, be it with respect to the money you earn, your societal status, and so on. Everything that need not necessarily mean that you have to become arrogant and you should show off and all these things. When all of us hear about Ratan Tata sir, one thing which always stands out is the humility. Okay, so be it Ratan Tata or to some extent even be it Narayan Murthy and so on. If you ask the employees of Tata Motors or Tata Group as well as Infosys and so on, now these are the people who are actually the drivers, who are the driving forces. So even though they are the CEOs or the owners of the company, they would still don't mind standing in a queue for lunch, holding their own plates and eating exactly the same what other employees are eating. That is a typical example of humility or humbleness. They are an epitome of uh, uh, humbleness. So I was talking about empathy again. This is a very short video. I'll show you the video. Uh, what is empathy and how important it is for us to put ourselves in the shoes of the other person and see this. So you can go through this video. It is a short one, and a very interesting one.
Okay, boys, calm down. Okay, everybody take your seats. Matthew, John, come up here, please. John, stand over there and face that direction. Matthew, come over here and just do the opposite. Okay, boys, turn around. John, what color is it?
Ball's white. Seriously? Bro, you just like making things difficult?
Well, what color do you say the ball is?
Black. The ball is black, clearly. I don't know what you see it wrong, but the ball is white.
Without looking at the ball, I want you to both switch places. Both of you, please turn around. And what color is the ball now? Okay, please have a seat. Throughout our lives, we believe many things, and we hold dear what we think is right and true. But at times there'll be others who disagree with us. What we believe to be 100% right, they believe the opposite just as strongly. How can that be? Can't they see? We can become frustrated. We might grow distant. We may even sever relationships. Slow down. Step into the other person's shoes. Make all the difference.
So what we have seen here is perceptions change. People look at things in a different way from their own perspective. So we also look at it in a different perspective, and there can be a difference of opinion, but that need not necessarily mean that the other person is always wrong. Okay, because they are looking at something from their own perspective, their thoughts about it will be different, and so we have to uh, slow down. We have to breathe. We have to calm down. We need to try and put ourselves in the other person's shoes, and then see what is right and what is wrong. So See, these are the different, you could say, adjectives which are used in order to be a good human being. It also holds good for, in order to be a good leader, in order to basically be a good person. That is, you need to have the right attitude. You should have communication. You should have knowledge, flexibility. You should be proactive. You should be excellent. You should gather experience. You should be positive, and so on. See, you can, if you see this entire slide, it is like, providing everything in a nutshell. In one single slide, we can see a reflection of, what we need to be. So uh, at least a few of them, I'm sure over a period of time, in this lifetime, we may not be able to incorporate all these things in us, but at least majority of them, if we can imbibe and inculcate in our day to day activities, then I'm sure that it is going to be of a great help. Then when I talk about humility, empathy is one part, humility is another thing. There is this beautiful story about Alexander, who was a great emperor. Uh, the story is something like this. Alexander has grown old. He's on his deathbed, and by that time, he has conquered almost, 2/3 of the world, or more than that of the world, and he has got all the riches in the world. Everything is there, but now he has realized that the time has come to, leave this world. So what he does is, he calls, all the wise men and ministers and important people in his kingdom, and the doctors also do come, and they say, okay, here he doesn't have much time. And it is at that moment that Alexander says, see, when I die, and when you're taking me for my burial, uh, in the coffin where you place me, just make sure of, one thing. You can decorate everything as much as possible. You can do whatever you want, but please keep my hands outside the coffin. Okay, so you place me in the coffin, but when you're closing the coffin, please ensure that my hands are outside the coffin. Now everyone is shocked. Everyone is surprised. Now what is Alexander saying? So when asked, he says, "No, I have spent my entire life conquering, and I am at wars, and doing all these things. But even let the world know that even a great conqueror or a great emperor like me, when I die, I'm going to go empty-handed." So that is all about humility. So we may earn a lot of money, materialistic wealth, and so on, but what we are going to actually carry with us will be only the good wishes, and the blessings from others. So when you are building a, relationship, make sure that you build trustworthy relationships, and the bonding is good, and so on, because these are the relationships that are going to help you during tough times, and not any money. Okay, so even in this pandemic, we are seeing that people are ready to shell out money like anything, be it for injections, be it for oxygen, be it for anything, but it's not being made available. It's not available. uh, we also have good Samaritans who are going out of the way to help others, and make it available. Unknown people, who are helping, and so on. So that is something which, we see that is all about the humbleness, and the care and the concern towards the society, and so on. Okay, then we have a few questions. If you can answer these questions, keep them in mind, and over a period of time, keep asking these questions to yourself. The first one is: are you grateful? Are you grateful to anyone as of now? Why? You are mentally and physically fit. You are stable. Then you have two square meals a day. You are being provided food every day. Then you are blessed with a wonderful family. So when you have these, you actually you don't need more. For these things you have to be extremely grateful. We have seen so many people who are not mentally fit. Okay, so they are born with a disorder, be it autism, be it some other form of mental problem. And similarly, we have seen people who are not physically fit. Either they have no limbs or no arms or something like that. But for you all, you are all physically fit, mentally fit. You can have two square meals a day. You are blessed with that, and then you also have a wonderful family. So please be grateful for all of these. Then, are you successful? Of course, this is something which you can define over a period of time. But there are some questions. What is your definition of success? Somebody may say, okay, earning a lot of money is success. Somebody may say, I want to be at peace, harmony, happiness, and so on. That is their definition of success. So, which means different people have different definitions of success, and whatever your definition may be, you just make sure that you work towards it. Okay, so that is what will make you successful. Then, are you happy? Now, these are three important traits when we talk about being grateful, successful, and happy, which are intangible. Intangible is we cannot assess them. They are highly, you could say, individualistic. That means what is the definition of success for you may not be the same definition for me. Similarly, what makes you happy may not make me happy, and vice versa. So, are you happy? So, if the answer is no, suppose if somebody asks you, "Are you happy?" If the answer is no, then why are you doing what you are doing? That means you need to change what you are doing. And uh, we also have come across this the two parrot siblings, where most of us are what we are, not because of what we were yesterday. It has been a journey of experiences. It has been a journey of upbringing. It has been a journey of our exposure to the society, the friends, the siblings, everything. All these experiences have shaped our career. So, those two parrots are separated at birth, and one is taken by a seer or a sage, the other one is taken by a bandit. And after a few years, even though the two parrots have the same biological mother and father, one parrot is extremely humble and polite, and when somebody comes to the whatever ashram or something, it says, "Please come. You must be tired. Have a seat. Do you want some water?" Uh, these are the kind of words which that parrot utters. While the other one, which was taken by a bandit, when somebody passes nearby, that parrot utters, "Oh, catch that guy, kill him, rob him, murder him," and so on. Okay, so what is the fault of the parrots in this? Absolutely nothing. It is just the upbringing. It is just the environment which has changed their behavior. So the same thing happens for us also. We should be very very careful about our surroundings, our environment, our upbringing, and the moment we become, let's say, intelligent. What I mean by intelligent is when we start understanding things, we should know what is right, what is wrong, and act accordingly. Then how do our thoughts start? We all have a thinking process. So how do our thoughts start? They all start with the mind, which is the logical part. We all think in a very logical way. From the mind it goes to the heart, which is the emotional part. So when it comes to decision making, sometimes we take decisions straight from our heart, and sometimes we take decisions straight from our mind, depending on what we are talking of. But in most of the cases, whenever decision making is involved, there is a third factor to it which actually plays a major role. And that third factor is, it's our gut. Okay, so I have a gut feeling that this is going to work, or this is definitely not going to work, which is nothing but our intuition. So all these three play a major role, and we should be sensible enough to understand that when a decision is being taken, um, which one is more important, whether we need to be logical, whether we need to be emotional, or we have to follow our intuition, because there are certain things which we are unaware of, what is going to happen in the years to come and so on. So these are the three things which affect our thoughts. Now, attitude is everything. I have been talking about so many other things, but please remember, uh, uh, one of the greatest sayings by a CEO of a company was, "We hire people not because of their skills, but because of their attitude." Understand this sentence very carefully. We hire people not because of their skills, but because of their attitude. Because skills can always be taught, but attitude cannot be changed. So whatever attitude you developed, make sure that you reinforce it, and you build a strong level of you could say attitude, positive attitude, so that nobody can change it. That is something which is extremely important. People say, no, you need to develop a positive attitude and so on, but what exactly do they mean by that? What they mean is, you look at everything with a pinch of salt. You be emotional, you be logical, as well as you have some intuition involved in it. So positive attitude is, when a glass of water is half, if there is if it is not full, then an optimist will say that, oh, it still has half a glass of water. A pessimist will say, oh my god, it's already half empty. Okay. So you always need to be an optimist, and develop this positive attitude. Then we always talk about something called as the ask triangle. I have been an ardent, you could say, um, um, uh, I always tell this to everyone about the ask triangle. Now, what is this ask triangle? Now, ask triangle is, obviously, there's a triangle which has got three vertices. Uh, the base vertices have these two. So, of this ask triangle, S stands for skills and K for knowledge. No doubt, you need to have skills and knowledge, but all these are going to be useless if you have a very poor attitude. So, at the top is what we have, the most important aspect, which is nothing but the attitude. All your skills, all your knowledge will go down the drain. They are going to be an entire waste if you have a very bad attitude. Nobody will listen to you. Nobody would like to join hands with you. Nobody would like to hire you. Nobody would like to be in the company of you, and so on. If you have a very very bad irritable attitude, even though you may be highly skilled, you may be highly knowledgeable. So skills and knowledge you can always gather and uh, get them whenever you want. But attitude, nobody is going to change that. So it's only you. It is your own responsibility to change your attitude. Okay. Now, this is a wonderful quadrant where again, it speaks volumes about attitude and how we should be. And this present quadrant where you are seeing I am okay, you are okay, where we say it's an assertive type of a relationship, is the best quadrant. You should always have this attitude that, okay, I am also fine and you're also fine, so everything is going on smoothly in this world. But at the same time, there are people who say that I am okay, you are not okay. Okay, so everything is fine with me, but you are useless. You're nowhere near me, and so on. So these are the people who are extremely egoistic. They are arrogant, and uh, nobody likes their behavior. Then we have another class of people who say, I am not okay, you are okay. Okay, the people who always complain. Some people say that nothing is happening right with me, and see, you are so blessed, you have all the worldly pleasures and so on. So these are the people who are pessimistic, who are depressed, and who are actually a kind of demotivators. And the last one is actually the most dangerous, where we say, I'm not okay, and you are not okay. And God only has to help such kind of people, where uh, they find nothing in this world to be satisfactory. So nothing good is happening with me, nothing good is happening with you, and the entire world is useless. So that is the worst case scenario. We have to completely avoid this. Okay. So what we want is actually this part. We all should fall in this category. This we have to avoid as much as possible. This also we have to avoid as much as possible. This is something which is in fact uh, to be avoided completely. Okay. So we have to always develop an attitude where we keep saying, I'm okay, you are okay. The moment you say I am okay, you are not okay, that means it shows some kind of an arrogance and lack of empathy. So this is something uh, which you need to remember. Okay. Then we have small this thing about leadership. Now, in order to be a great leader of people, inspire them to follow you and not your rules. This is, it again sends a tremendous signal. So if you want to be a leader, how people follow a leader, or why people follow a leader? Because of their overall aura or personality, not because they want to implement. So, in this context, I always say that you should always command respect. You can never demand respect. You cannot say every day, you come and salute me, and come and whatever, praise me, or do as I say, and so on. You should always try to be a leader, or have all those skills where people follow you because you inspire them. You are a role model to them, and your rules and all, they will automatically fall in place. It doesn't matter too much. So how to be a great leader? This guy is again one of the best orators I have ever seen, by the name Simon Sinek. So this again is a very short video. I suggest you go through the video and just try to listen to what he says. How to be a great leader. I'm sure you'll get impressed by this.
Charlie Kim, who's the CEO of a company called NextJump in New York City, a tech company, he makes the point that if you had hard times in your family, would you ever consider laying off one of your children? We would never do it. And why do we consider laying off people inside our organization? Charlie implemented a policy of lifetime employment. If you get a job at NextJump, you cannot get fired for performance issues. In fact, if you have issues, they will coach you and they will give you support, just like we would with one of our children who happens to come home with a C. Cool. It's the complete opposite. This is the reason so many people have such a visceral hatred, sort of anger at some of these banking CEOs with their disproportionate salaries and bonus structures. It's not the numbers. It's that they have violated the very definition of leadership. They have violated this deep-seated social contract. We know that they allowed their people to be sacrificed so they could protect their own interests. Or worse, they sacrificed their people to protect their own interests. This is what so offends us, not the numbers. Would anybody be offended if we gave a $150 million bonus to Gandhi? How about a $250 million bonus to Mother Teresa? We have an issue with that? None at all. None at all. Great leaders would never sacrifice the people to save the numbers. They would sooner sacrifice the numbers to save the people. Bob Chapman, who runs a large manufacturing company in the Midwest called Barry Waymiller, in 2008, was hit very hard by the recession, and they lost 30% of their orders overnight. Now, in a large manufacturing company, this is a big deal, and they could no longer afford their labor pool. They needed to save $10 million. So, like so many companies today, the board got together and discussed layoffs, and Bob refused. You see, Bob doesn't believe in head counts. Bob believes in heart counts, and it's much more difficult to simply reduce the heart count. And so they came up with a furlough program. Every employee from secretary to CEO was required to take 4 weeks of unpaid vacation. They could take it any time they wanted. They did not have to take it consecutively. But it was how Bob announced the program that mattered so much. He said, it's better that we should all suffer a little than any of us should have to suffer a lot. And morale went up. They saved $20 million. And most importantly, as would be expected, when the people feel safe and protected by the leadership in the organization, the natural reaction is to trust and cooperate. And quite spontaneously, nobody expected, people started trading with each other. Those who could afford it more would trade with those who could afford it less. People would take 5 weeks that somebody else only had to take 3. Leadership is a choice. It is not a rank. I know many people at the senior-most levels of organizations who are absolutely not leaders. They are authorities, and we do what they say because they have authority over us, but we would not follow them. And I know many people who are at the bottoms of organizations who have no authority, and they are absolutely leaders. And this is because they have chosen to look after the person to the left of them, and they have chosen to look after the person to the right of them. This is what a leader is. I heard a story of some Marines who were out in theater, and as is the Marine custom, the officer ate last, and he let his men eat first. And when they were done, there was no food left for him. When they went back out in the field, his men brought him some of their food so that he may eat. Because that's what happens. We call them leaders because they go first. We call them leaders because they take the risk before anybody else does. We call them leaders because they will choose to sacrifice so that their people may be safe and protected and so their people may gain. And when we do, the natural response is that our people will sacrifice for us. They will give us their blood and sweat and tears to see that their leader's vision comes to life. And when we ask them, why would you do that? Why would you give your blood and sweat and tears for that person? They all say the same thing. Because they would have done it for me. And isn't that the organization we would all like to work in? Thank you very much. Thank you.
So that is all about leadership, and I would suggest there are many more videos by Simon Sinek. You can always watch them on YouTube. Now, what are the reasons for problems arising and unhappiness? Uh, this is one is we don't understand uh, the humans properly. Then we have this whole concept where we say humans bodies body plus soul, and the soul is not fully understood because it is intangible, and our self needs can always be uh, uh, seen, and they are never fulfilled, and hence we have this concept of unhappiness. Now, there are some important characteristics to keep going. I have talked about this. One is the empathy. The second is gratitude. The third is attitude. Trust. Make sure that you keep this trust in place. Then respect. Respect for everyone. It's not just you have to respect elders. You have to respect teachers and so on. You have to respect your peers also. You have to respect somebody who is below you also, and so on. So then discipline is in all forms. It can be in the form of time management, it can be in the form of money management, financial management, anything. There has to be some kind of a discipline that needs to be maintained. Then loyalty, there is a great debate on loyalty these days. Credibility is something which needs to be earned. When we talk about credibility, you have to earn it. Then courage to say and do the right things whenever it is required. Now we'll come to uh, maybe on the closure part, that is the skills for employability. Okay, so what is employability? Most of you are doing this course because you want to be employable. So what does it take in order to be employable? So when we look at skills for employability, there are a few very important things that need to be remembered. One is I have talked enough about this: develop good communication skills. Then the second is focus on your basics. When we talk about focusing on your basics, basic subjects, uh, we many a times complain, and unfortunately, even AICT is doing that. That physics, chemistry, maths, maybe they are not important, but that is in the context of skill development. So you train people only for those skills which are needed for their job. That may be true in some sense, but when we look at survival and our day-to-day activities, there are some basics which have to be learnt, and even if they are not a part of the curriculum, we need to keep them strong. For example, Newton's laws are not going to change anywhere in the near future. Okay, so chemical reactions are not going to change. So these basics are going to remain. People have done a lot of research and come out as some stronghold basics. So these have to be kept in mind. Then develop loyalty. Of course, I talked about loyalty, where uh, when you take up a job, this is an important skill for employability, where you build a resume. For example, when you are writing a resume, and after about 2 3 years, if somebody finds that in 2 3 years you have changed about 6 to 7 jobs, that sends a very wrong signal. Okay, so the company or the person who is going to hire you will also think that, oh, this person is not going to stay with us for more than say 3 4 months, because you have changed so many jobs. So, one of the major reasons why people change jobs is for money. My suggestion is, don't worry about money too much initially for the first 3 4 years, because that is the time when you have to learn new skills. Okay, so once you are skilled enough, you don't have to worry at all. Wherever you go, people will welcome you with open arms. They may even roll out a red carpet for you. So you have to develop a sense of trust between the superiors and you. And as I said, don't worry about your financial income initially. Improve your skills, your salary, your income will automatically improve. Then the fourth point is, be compassionate. Okay, so compassionate is showing a kind of a good attitude towards others. So not everyone has what you have, and vice versa. So if your growth is faster, it's good for you. There is nothing wrong. You're growing faster, but that need not necessarily mean that you have to demean or undermine others. So when you are growing, you should also make sure that others grow. So as the saying goes, it takes time to grow, but the downfall is very fast. And they also say that when you're climbing up a ladder of success, make sure that you hold hands with all the people around you, because it is going to be the same people whom you are going to meet when you are falling down. Okay, so when you have excellent relationships with all people, they are the ones who are going to help you during your downfall, or when you are going through tough times later on. So if you have a set of trustworthy people around you, it actually helps you rebuild your confidence. Then another thing to improve your employability skill is follow your intuition and think out of the box. Think out of the boxes where you talk about uh, learning new skills, and being interdisciplinary, and so on. So this is also something which I had mentioned, where there is no need to call yourself as a pure civil engineer, pure electronics engineer, pure mechanical engineer, and so on. You have to be a perfect blend of all of these things. Are going to be interdisciplinary from now onwards. So use common sense, and many a times simple solutions are available even for the most complex problems. So what it needs is a calm and composed mind blended with common sense. Uh, then master your memory and take care of your health. Both are extremely important. When I say master your memory, I don't say you should have an elephant's memory. At least you need to remember um, uh, what good things have happened to you, or for example, if you ask your parents or grandparents, they will say way back then, when mobile phones were not there, they knew landline numbers of at least 100 people memorized. Okay, so they then there was no necessity of storing it somewhere. It was by heart. They knew it in a memorized manner. So there are various ways in which uh, both memory as well as health can be improved, and uh, memory can be improved by certain tasks. And the reason why memory and health both have been included here is things like meditation, exercise, yoga, etc. uh, they also help in improving not only your health but also your memory. And stress is extremely high these days, and because of which it has resulted in several ailments or problems, both physical and mental. So to be employable, make sure that you take good care of your health, as well as you have a very good memory also. Then have a goal. Having a goal is extremely important. No problem if the goal keeps changing over a period of time. So you have a goal. Once you achieve it, you may say, "What next?" Okay. So have a new goal now, and do a SWOT analysis. SWOT analysis stands for strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats. So you should always know what your strengths are, and most of us, in fact, know. But most of us do not know what our weaknesses are. What are we weak at? Okay. So in fact, when we do this SWOT analysis, we can improve over our strengths. We can work on our weaknesses. We can just see what the opportunities are. Keep our eyes and ears open, and if there are any threats, how to remain aloof or away from those threats. So SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So once in 6 months at least, you should sit down and do a SWOT analysis of yourself. Then develop a right and positive attitude. I have been again talking too much about it, where the right attitude and the positive attitude is very important, because that is something which is going to lift your emotional quotient. What is emotional quotient? Again, maybe I'll just discuss pretty soon. Now, one important thing is, we all see that there is a rat race, and that rat race is very ugly. So never try to be a part of the rat race. This, in fact, has to be told even to the parents also. Don't make children a part of the rat race, because uh, comparing will not take you anywhere. No, there is no point in comparing yourself with others. What you need to do is, you have to compete with yourself. And there is a wonderful saying where they say that a trickle of excellence every day will one day bring a tsunami of success. Okay, so every day you try to improve. So try to be better than what you were yesterday. Tomorrow, try to be better than what you are today, and so on. And in all aspects. Okay, so be it knowledge, be it communication, be it attitude, be it anything. Uh, don't be a part of the rat race. Instead of that, try to compete with yourself. Have a race set with yourself that will take you to greater heights. Then keep learning and keep reading. This is something again which I keep emphasizing, because uh, one thing is amiss these days is, you don't read at all. Now, reading has so many, you could say, plus points, or so many benefits, advantages. One is, it not only improves your communication, but it also increases your level of knowledge. So you read anything you want. The issue here is, it it can be as simple as a newspaper, no problem. But unless and until you start reading, it is going to be of no use at all. So make sure that you read whatever interests you. and it will improve your communication skills. So it can be fiction, it can be philosophy, it can be anything, that interests you. But reading has to be done. There is no escape. No doubt, no last minute readings you all do through your mobile, or uh, textbooks which are as good as, you could say, uh, VTU notes or something like that, which, I don't want to comment at this point of time, but are not going to serve the purpose in the long run. Along with that, that is a last minute reading which you do only to pass your exams or get through your exams. But along with that, to become a good person, or to improve your overall personality, you have to read, and you need to keep reading. So, in order to be a great leader, I have just mentioned, inspire them to follow you and not your rules. I want to re-emphasize on this point. And what are the adjectives for effective leaders? So, if you just look at it, uh, we had one more slide where we talked about various traits as a human being. But here, if you want to be an effective leader, then you have to be passionate, you should have a lot of integrity, you should coach others, you should be patient, you have to be a learner, you have to be a role model, and so on. So we can't again incorporate all these things overnight. It is a journey. Okay, so to be an effective leader, you need to undertake this journey, because sooner or later, I have talked about skills for employability. I'm sure all of you will get employment. But over a period of time, over a period of 5 years, 10 years, slowly from a normal employee, you will become a manager, you will become a leader, and so on. So in order to be an effective leader, these things have to be understood properly. Then leadership is all about being able, being adventurous, being ambitious, being cheerful. The same things I've just picked and placed, and I'm sure all of you will be able to understand what it means. So clean, and when we say clean, it is not that you need to take a bath every day and wear well ironed and clean clothes. Clean is by heart. Okay, so you have to be very clean by heart, without any biases, without any prejudices, and so on. So you have to be clever, you have to be competitive, confident, cooperative, creative, critical. As a leader, you have to be dependable, you have to be democratic, you have to be articulate, you have to be energetic, enthusiastic, flexible, friendly. So you can see there are so many adjectives, and no, if you just look at this and tick, keep ticking whatever you have. At this point of time, I'm sure you will hardly have, say, 4 or 5 points in this. But by the time you become employable, get employed, and become a leader, at least about 80% of this, I would say, you should have. You should be hardworking, healthy, humane. Humane is where you have compassion and kindness and concern towards others. You should also be humorous, very important. They say, at least during these pandemic times, negative thoughts and the sad feelings will decrease your immunity by almost 20-25%, while having a good laugh, which causes a stomach ache. Having a good laugh will increase your immunity level by at least 40 to 50%. So you have to be humorous, but please remember, you should never be humorous at the cost of others. Okay, so don't don't try to make fun of others and crack jokes where the other person will feel bad. Okay, so there are other ways in which you can be humorous also. Then you have to be imaginative, you have to be impartial, most important, treat everyone the same, you have to be intelligent, and so on. So what skills do leaders need? They need personal skills. They need something like developing self-awareness. You should be aware of what you are. So determining values and priorities, identifying some styles, assessing attitude towards change, and so on. So that is all about self-awareness. Then you should also be good at managing stress. So first thing is, you need to understand that you are undergoing stress, and you need to manage it. You can manage time, you can delegate duties and responsibilities to others, and how do you cope with stressors and so on. So you should also be an excellent problem solver. Okay, so use a creative approach, rational approach, and you have to foster innovation in others. That means you need to help others grow also. Then we talked about personal skills. There are also something called as interpersonal skills, that is with others. So something with others means you need to communicate. See, communicating effectively is different from communicating supportively. Communication per se itself is extremely important, but you have to communicate supportively. So, what do we mean by communicating supportively? So, coaching, counseling, listening, and so on. Then, gaining power and influences. You should be an excellent motivator, and you should also be very good at managing conflict. Now, conflict or difference of opinion are bound to arise. So, you have to identify the causes. You have to select appropriate strategies, and then resolve confrontations. Then emotional quotient and intelligence quotient. Pick any day in your life, any day. Even as a student or tomorrow when you start working, any day in your life, and from morning till evening, just try to understand what are the emotions you go through, and at night list out all the emotions. So you'll go through anger, you'll go through happiness, sadness, envy, jealousy, fear, anxiety. So all these emotions are going to hit us. So you need to become self-aware of what emotions you go through, and you need to acknowledge them. And only when you acknowledge, you can hold yourself 100% accountable. So you can see what are the different kinds of emotions which we undergo every day. It can be sadness, it can be anger, frustration, and so on. So emotional intelligence is extremely important. These days, they say IQ is not as important and a true measure of success, whereas emotional quotient is. So successful leaders, they have got a very high emotional quotient. Now IQ, that is intelligence quotient. All of us, even you all have a very reasonably good intelligence quotient. That is not very important. You're born with it. It is hereditary. But emotional quotient is not hereditary. You have to learn it. You have to go through it over a period of time. So analysis and research has also shown that those with strong emotional quotient are more likely to succeed than those who have strongest relevance and relevant experience and IQ. So stronger EQ will give you more success. That is for sure. So this is the managerial grid where on the x-axis we have concern for production, and on the y-axis we have concern for people. So here again, we also need to be in this area, that is 9 and 9, where we talk about team management. So if somebody is 1-1, it is useless. Neither they are good at production nor they are good at concern for people. If you have very high concern for people, it is called as club management. Okay, so country club management. And if you have very high production and less concern for people, 9-1, then it is authority, and you expect others to obey you. So where you are more focused on production rather having any concern for people. Now this is average. This is something which is in between. So it is organizing man as well as management, where everything is at a very satisfactory level. But this is something which is the best. Okay, so where not only you have concern for people, but you also have very high production. Okay, then we have just a slide about leadership. You can see, a small young guy who is a cowherd, you can say. So leadership is not about size. It's about knowledge and wisdom. So if you are adept and well versed with these things, I'm sure you can all become great leaders. So a group of donkeys headed by a lion. Just understand the statement. Very important statement. A group of donkeys headed by a lion can easily defeat a group of lions headed by a donkey. So this is how important a leader is. So when we talked about courage, decision making, and leaders eat last, they always care for their employees and so on. In that sense, a group of donkeys which are headed by a lion can easily defeat a group of lions headed by a donkey. So managing is just doing things right, while leadership is doing the right things. So if you manage, you are just whatever is to be done, you are doing it in a correct manner. But leadership will enable you to do the right things, and that is how companies are going to survive. So the best part of your attire is what you wear. I have not talked about how to face interviews, how to write a resume, what is a group discussion, and so on. All that comes later on. So we'll see. When you come to fifth, sixth semester, we can have another session during that period. But the best part of your attire is what you wear is smile. Okay, so what you wear, how nicely you wear, everything is fine. But if you keep a very frowned face, or a very sad face, or a angry face, arrogant face, and so on, it is going to take away all the aura from your personality, importance from your personality. So just keep smiling, which is very very important. Okay, so we are almost on the verge of conclusion. I hope all of you could learn something out of this, all about communication, motivation, skills for employability, leadership, and so on, which are actually the most important things that need to be taught along with what you're learning as subjects. So I wish each one of you all the very best, and uh, thank you so much for your patient hearing. And you can always contact me. I'll be available once the college reopens. I'll be there. These are my phone numbers, and uh, you can contact me. Okay, so have a great time, and don't get disheartened by this pandemic. I'm sure things will improve. So let's wait and see, and we'll try to meet as early as possible in the college. So have a great day, and wish you all the best. Thank you very much. I'll stop sharing now.